Hey, good morning, and God bless you. What an awesome thing to be able to say to each other, God bless you. Have you stopped lately to think what it means to be blessed? Have you stopped and thought lately what it means to be blessed by God? Wow, what a cool greeting that we banter back and forth with each other, and we say so frequently and so easily to one another. God bless you. I don't know how many times a week I type that to people. God bless you. Here's a good definition of blessing. It means to be on the receiving end of the tangible and the intangible favor of God. God bless you. May the intangible and the tangible blessing of God and His favor reside upon you. You see, the question about God isn't really, will God bless me or does God want to bless me? The answer to that question is yes. God constantly, consistently is a God of blessing. God's nature is to bless us. God's nature is to give us good gifts. The question becomes really quickly, am I blessable? While God's love is unconditional, never shifts, it never changes, it never goes away. There's nothing I can do that would make God love me more or less. He loves me, He loves you, period. That's not going to change. That's the love of God. The blessings of God, however, are completely different. While the love of God is unconditional, the blessings of God are conditional. And that's the thought that's behind each one of the Beatitude statements. Blessed are the. Each statement goes on to define an aspect of condition of God's blessing. The word blessed in the Greek carries with it the idea of spiritual joy and satisfaction that lasts regardless of conditions, and it carries you through the pain and the sorrows and the loss and the grief and the confusion and the difficulties of this life. When Jesus started his most famous sermon, the first thing he begins with is, I want to show you 8 things that are going to help you be on the receiving end of God's blessing, God's favor in your life. Blessed, it says in Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. One of the most important life skills that you will ever have to learn in your life is this: how to be a peacemaker, how to resolve conflict, how to resolve conflict in a manner that it restores and it reconciles strained or broken relationships. If you don't learn this one, you're going to spend a lot of your life being miserable because you're surrounded by imperfect people. You run from conflict, you're going to be in trouble. If you try to get away from conflict, it's not going to work, and you're going to run into more conflict. And the conflict that you're running away from is going to take legs and come after you, and you're going to be miserable and unhappy much of your life. Conflict resolution is a very important skill. You have to know how to use resolution to bring conflict to its place. You have to know how to resolve a conflict in your marriage. You have to know how to resolve conflict with your children, with your friends, with your board members, with the members of your church, and with people who are in the community. Literally everywhere, God gives us opportunity for His favor and His blessing to rest on our lives as we exercise this resolution of conflict as peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Here's the problem. Almost nobody has taught us in our lives the how-tos of conflict resolution, yet it remains one of the most important skills for the peace, tranquility, satisfaction, and even happiness of your life. It's amazing. Jesus will attach blessing, the very favor of God, to this point of understanding how to lead conflict resolution. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. One of the evidences that you're a child of God, one of the proofs that you're on your way to heaven and that you have a relationship with God and that you have an intimacy with Christ is that you're a peacemaker. This term peacemaker comes with a certain amount of misconception. Let me begin by telling you what this term doesn't refer to. It's not talking about avoidance. Peacemaking doesn't mean that you run from problems. It doesn't mean that you pretend that problems don't exist. It doesn't mean that you're trying to convince yourself that there is no problem. Running from problems is not peacemaking, it's cowardice. Conflict is like a weed. You neglect it, you ignore it, you walk by it, hoping that it will disappear. It only gets bigger, it only gets stronger, and it only gets more difficult to get rid of. The second thing that peacemaking is it's not appeasement. Peacemaking is not simply caving in and giving people their own way. Just because you're being passive and quiet does not mean you're creating peace. I want to remind you that Jesus was a confrontational person. Jesus stood his ground on lots and lots of issues. Peacemaking is not avoidance, and it's not appeasement. Peacemaking is actively seeking resolution, restoration of those relationships. So why should I be a peacemaker? Why should I practice this? Well, beyond the favor of God, beyond the blessing of God, unresolved conflict hurts my relationship with God. You know, it's almost an impossibility to be right with God and wrong with others. The horizontal relationship has a huge impact on the vertical relationship. Our life comes into an intersection, and the way we treat others usually has great bearing on how well we're doing with God. God says, I can't claim to be close to him if I'm distant from somebody else. I can't say I love God and hate my brother, because that makes me a liar. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. 1 John 4, 7 and 8. In 1 John 4, 19 through 21, we loved because he first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, he's a liar. For anyone who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. And he has given us this command: whoever loves God must also love his brother. The second reason why I want to be a peacemaker is because unresolved conflict hinders my prayer life. It keeps my prayers from getting through. It keeps my prayers from getting to where they need to go. I'm praying prayers, but I'm broken in my relationship, and those broken relationships have a hindering ability in my prayer life. Did you know that when you're out of whack in relationship, the Bible says that God acts differently toward your prayers? Wow. It doesn't seem fair, but it says in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 7, husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as a weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. Wow. If I'm out of fellowship with Valerie, if she and I aren't doing well, I make sure that I get it right, because I can't afford to go day after day after day with God saying your prayers, Brett, are hindered because of the way you're handling your wife. There's a connection between the horizontal and the vertical relationships of my life. In Luke 10:27, it says this: he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as you love yourself. The third reason I need to be a peacemaker is unresolved conflict destroys my personal peace and my personal happiness. You probably know this one from personal experience. You can have money, you can have all the toys, you can have all the fame, but if your relationships don't work, then your life is miserable. You can be on the greatest vacation, cruising the most exotic ports of call, and if there's conflict in your relationship, you're miserable. James 3:18 says, peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. Can I remind you, the law of sowing and reaping is still in force. It's a law of the universe. What you plant grows, and what you plant, you harvest in your life. You sow, and then you reap. It's true with the good, and it's true with the bad. You sow gossip, you sow anger, you sow selfishness, you receive those things. And if you sow peace, and if you sow love, and if you sow friendship, if you're a peacemaker, not only are you the son, called the Son of God, but it brings to you the favor and the blessing of God. You're on the receiving end of the tangible and the intangible favor of a holy God. My friends, as we move into a new weekend of ministry and opportunity, following another week of challenge, difficulty, and confusion, may you be a peacemaker in all situations so that the favor of God will rest on you. God bless you. Have a great weekend.